Honda and Acura have new EVs on the market, but these are not made by Honda. They're in fact made by General Motors. So why did Honda go to GM, buy one of their EVs, and then rebrand it as a Prologue and a ZDX? And are these EVs any good? Well, let's go for a drive and find out. So yes, both this Prologue and the Acura ZDX are both made by General Motors, and underneath I believe that they are Chevrolet Blazers. This Prologue feels very big, both in width and in length. But other than that, it drives like a normal electric vehicle. It has two electric motors, one powering the front wheels and one powering the back wheels, and combined they produce 288 horsepower and 333 pound-feet of torque. This is a heavy car, but because electric motors provide instant torque, it doesn't feel slow at all. Depending on which trim of the Honda Prologue you choose, it comes with different sized wheels, thus it has different driving ranges. These driving ranges go from 439 kilometers up to 452 kilometers. But of course, like every other electric vehicle, the driving range depends on a number of different factors, such as the ambient air temperature, your driving style, how much regen you use, and so on. Speaking of regenerative braking is what I'm talking about. This Honda Prologue, of course, does have it. You can't adjust how much regen force you get every time that you lift your foot off the accelerator pedal. You just control it through the brake pedal. You can also get a maximum regen force if you pull and hold on the paddle that's on the left side of the steering wheel. However, this is a very tiny paddle and you can inadvertently hit the buttons that are just below it. These are to control the radio stations. Another way that you have to control the amount of regenerative braking is through the use of the one pedal mode. You just hit the little icon on the infotainment screen and the car goes into a one pedal drive mode. In this mode, you can also select how much regen force you get every time that you lift your foot completely off the accelerator pedal, whether it's a normal amount for steady and smooth braking, or a lot for much faster braking. In my opinion, the normal mode is enough because it brings the car smoothly to a stop within a reasonable distance. The Prologue is powered by an 85 kilowatt-hour battery pack. It can be recharged at a rate of up to 150 kilowatts, which Honda says will replenish the battery from 20% to 80% in about 35 minutes. The car will also accept up to 11.5 kilowatts of power from a level 2 charger, and that will take up to 9.5 hours to fully recharge. This Prologue feels competent around corners, but it's not the first word in driving enjoyment. As I said earlier, it is and feels very large. It's about as wide and as long as the Honda Passport. Despite its size though, it is quite easy to maneuver. Steering is precise but really light. There is some body roll through corners and the car doesn't really encourage you to push it through the turns. It's just something you drive to get you from point A to point B. So that's about it for the Honda Prologue. Now let's take a look at the Acura ZDX and see how that one differs. The biggest difference between this ZDX and the Prologue is that with this Acura, you're getting more power. The ZDX A-Spec produces 490 horsepower and 437 pound-feet of torque, which is a pretty significant bump over the Prologue. But this one is the Type-S. That means it delivers 499 horsepower and 544 pound-feet of torque. It still is a heavy car, I mean all electric vehicles are, but of course because of the extra power, it is much faster. With the ZDX, you're also getting a bigger battery, 102 kilowatt hours. That enables this Type S to drive for up to 447 kilometers, while the A-Spec gets almost 500 kilometers of electric driving range. But there's more to this ZDX than just a bigger battery and more power and more driving range. It also corners a little bit better, and that's because it comes with adaptive air suspension. The air suspension is only available on the Type S version of the ZDX, and it allows the car to have 3 different ride heights: increased, normal, and low. But of course it also changes stiffness depending on the drive mode that you're in. And when you do switch the car into sport mode and the suspension stiffens up, in addition to the 22-inch wheels that you get on this ZDX Type-S versus 21s on the Prologue Touring, the car actually does drive better around corners. Now, of course, it doesn't drive quite as well as some other electric vehicles like the Ford Mach-E GT or the Hyundai Ioniq 5N. That car is the most fun EV that I've ever driven. But it is much more entertaining to drive than the Prologue, that's for sure. Also, by now, I'm sure that you've noticed that this car gets much bigger front brakes than the Prologue. 6-piston fixed calipers with over 15-inch rotors. But that is on the Type S, not on the A-Spec. Charging the bigger battery takes a little bit longer than in the Honda Prologue, but the Acura ZDX can charge at a faster rate, up to 190 kilowatts. So from 20% to 80%, Acura says it will take up to 42 minutes. From a level 2 charger, it'll take up to 11 hours to fully recharge the larger battery. Over most road surfaces, the ride of the Honda Prologue is comfortable. Having said that, it is a little bit firmer than that of the Honda CR-V, for example. It's only when you find yourself driving over very poorly maintained roads does the firmer ride start to feel a bit too rough. Additionally, the seats of the Prologue don't provide much support. They're a bit too flat and not much in the way of side bolsters. On the other hand, the Acura ZDX's air suspension can absorb bumps a bit better than the Honda Prologue. Additionally, the seats in the ZDX have more adjustments and they are more supportive for more body types. Inside the Honda Prologue, it is a very spacious cabin to be in. For my 6'4" height, I have plenty of leg space and plenty of headroom. Visibility around the car is pretty good for the most part. It does have some decently sized A-pillars, and the view out the back is a little bit difficult to see, but otherwise out the front, out the side, and even in the blind zones, no problems whatsoever. But it doesn't really feel like a Honda vehicle in here. It feels, well, like a GM vehicle. From the physical climate controls to the infotainment system to the buttons on the steering wheel to the indicator stalks, it's all straight from the GM parts bin. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing because all of these controls work just fine. It's just that if you hop into the Prologue expecting a Honda interior, sorry to disappoint you. This is a GM through and through. The only thing that's a Honda in here is this little badge on the steering wheel. Otherwise, it's all GM. And it does have a few GM quirks. For example, if you want to switch the car into sport mode, it's a little button right next to your left knee. Also next to your left knee is the parking brake button, which is right next to the sport button. So when you're driving, not only do you have to take your eyes off the road to look down to make sure that you're actually hitting the sport button, but you could inadvertently hit that parking brake button. Now, don't be alarmed. Even if you do hit it while the car is moving, the car won't actually engage the parking brakes. You'll just get an error message on the dashboard, but the car will continue to move forward. Another GM quirk is that if you want to turn on the headlights and taillights, you don't do it through the left indicator stalk. Instead, it's a button on the infotainment screen. So again, if you do want to turn them on and off, you have to take your eyes off the road and select it on the infotainment screen. Of course, this car has automatic headlights and taillights, and they will turn on as soon as it gets darker outside, or if you turn on the wipers. But let's say that it's foggy outside and it's not yet dark enough for the automatic headlights to turn on. You have to do it manually through the infotainment system. So again, just a couple of GM quirks in this Honda Prologue. And that's about it for the front seats of the Prologue. Now let's go sit in the back seats. Rear space is generous even behind my tall driving position. My knees do not touch the back of the front seats, but my hair is close to brushing up against the headliner. The panoramic sunroof allows plenty of light for rear occupants. The floor is flat. There are air vents, but no third climate zone. and a couple of USB-C ports for device charging. In the trunk, the Prologue has 671 liters of cargo space behind the second row and 1,543 liters with the rear seats folded. There is some storage space underneath the floor, but there is no space underneath the hood like how there is in some other EVs. Also, both the Prologue and the ZDX have available hands-free power-operated liftgates, which project a little light onto the ground to let you know where you need to swing your foot to operate it. Inside the Acura ZDX, it does feel a little bit more like an Acura than the Honda Prologue did a Honda. So it has nicer materials throughout the cabin. The door panels do imitate an Acura vehicle just a little bit more, and it has a cover for the driver instrumentation that is reminiscent of an Acura. But everything else still feels like a GM. Everything from the infotainment system to the climate controls to the steering wheel buttons, it's all still GM. Interior space up here in the front seats is the same as in the Honda Prologue, as you would expect. These are twin vehicles, so plenty of leg space for my 6'4" height and plenty of headroom. Also, outward visibility is pretty much the same as it is in the Prologue, but in the Acura ZDX, you can get it with a rear camera mirror, so you can see out the back a little bit more clearly. And that's about it for the front seats of the Acura ZDX. Feels a little bit more like an Acura, but still very much a GM vehicle. So now, let's go sit in the back. Legroom and headroom in the back seats are identical to those of the Prologue. Cargo capacity is a bit more in the Acura with 813 liters behind the second row seats and 1,756 liters with the rear seats folded. The ZDX has power release buttons in the trunk to drop those back seats, whereas in the Prologue, you have to go to the side doors in order to lower the rear seats. The 2024 Honda Prologue starts at $59,990 Canadian, with the touring trim costing $69,990 Canadian. The 2024 Acura ZDX A-Spec starts at $84,990, with the Type-S costing $91,490 Canadian. Neither of these prices include any incentives or government rebates. When it comes to convenience features, both vehicles are equipped with the same ones that are found in almost every other EV, which include heated and leather upholstered front seats, ventilated front seats, dual zone automatic climate controls, wireless phone charging pads, head-up displays, 11.3-inch touchscreens with Google built in, wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto connectivity, Wi-Fi hotspots, and OnStar services. But that last one does require a subscription plan. However, with the Acura being a more premium brand, it has a few more convenience features such as an available third zone climate, heated rear seats, perforated Milano leather upholstery, power tilt and telescopic steering wheel, ambient lighting, and an 18-speaker Bang & Olufsen audio system. Arguably the biggest gadget that is available in the Acura ZDX Type-S is hands-free cruise. This is GM's Supercruise system, which allows hands-free driving across most highways throughout Canada and the United States. The system works very well both in rain and nighttime, but in some situations it can feel a bit unsettling. For example, when the car was going through a steady curve, the steering wheel kept swerving slightly back and forth like as though the system was searching for the edges of the lane. But otherwise, it is a fabulous system that can also change lanes both on its own or with an initiation of the indicator stalk by the driver. As for safety, both cars come equipped with the same driver and safety aids. These include forward collision alert with automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, side blind zone alert with steering assist, reverse automatic braking, available front and rear parking sensors, and surround view cameras among a few others. The Acura also has automatic parking assist available on the Type-S. One thing that I want to mention about the safety systems and driver aids of the Acura ZDX is that I've noticed a lot more false readings with the forward collision alert system, as well as more intervention by the lane departure warning than I did in the Honda Prologue. For the forward collision alert system, it usually happens when there's a car parked on the side of the road and it's right at the start of a corner. The ZDX thinks that I'm going to ram right behind it. As for the lane departure warning, well, right now it is fall and there are leaves on the side of roads, so sometimes it thinks that those leaves are lane markings. Other times it thinks that the tar snakes, the little black tars that you see on roads to fill in the cracks, it sometimes thinks that those are lane markings. so it'll give a false reading. I think that this ZDX needs a little bit more tweaking to the safety and driver aids, which I'm sure that they can be done through over-the-air updates. So back to the original question that I asked at the start of the video. Why did Honda go to GM and get them to make the Prologue and the ZDX when Honda already has an EV in the world market, the Honda E? Well, the Honda E just wouldn't really cut it here in North America because, let's face it, North Americans really like big SUVs and big pickup trucks. So a little car like that is not going to be enough. So I think that's why Honda went to GM to produce the Prologue and the ZDX for those customers that want to stay within the Honda family but want to make that transition from gasoline to electric vehicles. Now, Honda will be making their very own electric vehicles that are much bigger than the Honda E for the North American market, but those cars won't arrive until 2026 or maybe 2027. So until then, this is a temporary measure. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that these are bad EVs. In fact, I think that they are pretty good EVs. They do have a few little quirks that can be worked on and fixed, but overall, they are actually good EVs. The point that I'm trying to get across is that if you are walking into a Honda or an Acura dealership, don't expect these to be Honda or Acura vehicles. They are GMs. That's all that I'm trying to get across. In the meantime, if you would like to know more about the Honda Prologue or the Acura ZDX, I have a more detailed written review of them over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up there. And as always, I will see you in the next car, truck, or most likely an SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one.